Let's have a little quick catch up. And before we jump into it, as
Let's, mate.
always, you know who we are. Casuals and Counters podcast. Every single Monday in your ears. Two content creators in the MMA space that talk everything that comes under the remit of mixed martial arts, content creation, marketing, business, you name it. It's going to come up in discussion more than likely. But the reason I feel so fatigued, Leo, is it's been an intense couple of days. Friday obviously was Cage Warriors, and then getting in late from Cage Warriors, which we can obviously talk about in a little minute, but getting in late, finishing the work from Cage Warriors, going to bed about 4-ish, getting up at 7, going to Bournemouth for the Supreme Championships to go and film my friend down in Bournemouth, going straight there, finishing up there at 1 o'clock, going back to my friend's, no sleep, and here we are now.
Wild.
So we are talking no food, and I mean no food for the last 2 days, and no sleep.
You're committed.
I've got an iced coffee, and I've got a podcast to do, and we don't miss.
We don't miss, mate. Not at all. I can't say mine's been the same. I've had a pretty chill weekend. I got my video out yesterday, which is nice. Doing okay.
What was it on?
Volkanovski. Just his career. I think I was torn between doing the format as a proper documentary style thing or a casuals guide thing. But what I might do is when the longevity goes on the casuals guide, which is what I sent it out as, I'm gonna reformat the title and thumbnail. And then just leave it like that, because then it's more likely to just long term do a bit better. So we'll roll with that.
It's such a puzzle, man. It's such a puzzle of how to package the product, because you have a gift. It's how we've discussed it before. You have a gift when you're creating a video. That is your gift. That is your present. That is your surprise for somebody. However, it is basically all determined on how you gift wrap it. And I am terrible, figuratively and literally, at gift wrapping. Terrible. I'm so bad. In real life, I'm genuinely bad. I find it hard to get tension in the corners. And I don't get enough reps. That's the truth of it. I think when I do a few more, I get a little bit better. But in YouTube, I'm terrible as well, because it's all about packaging a product, and you have to tell a story with your thumbnail. You have to relate it to the title. The title has to intrigue. Yeah. It has to tell you what you're going to get out of it. It has to be informal, punchy, under 50 caps. And you're sitting there with a minefield, and you're thinking, my video's not that bad. I think a few people will like it.
It doesn't matter about that.
But I don't know how to get it to the people. How do I get it to the people? It's an art form.
Don't ask me, mate, because I'm still figuring it out. Believe me. It is a puzzle. I don't think where any of us are.
But that's the game, though, I think, with YouTube, right? And when I think you start appreciating the game of YouTube, which I am now, as much as I've always appreciated it from afar, I've never been sort of consistently every single week in the trenches trying to level up and just paying homage to YouTube and knowing that you have to just put in the grind on that platform.
It's just, it's a lot of it is just, I just look and I practice. Like, honestly, I made so many thumbnails of videos I'm planning to make, or I haven't even bothered, or I won't even make, but I'll make them anyway, because it's just about sort of finding a sort of format that you can see is going to work, and take ideas from other people and put it together into your own, which is kind of what I've done with mine. And I feel I'm still debating whether I stick with mine or change it. I don't know. I trying not to overthink it, because I've done that already, and it leads to worse results, because you end up changing things a million times.
Analysis paralysis.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, it's just it's the game, isn't it? Really.
That is one thing, though. That is genuinely, if anyone's listening, because I know there's actually a few more people now, which is quite exciting, that listen into this because they enjoy the side of the content creation or getting into the sport or making their own page or content, whatever it may be. And the truth of it is, literally just slipped my mind what we were talking about as I was making my profound point. Jog my memory. It was of YouTube. Was
Thumbnails.
It not? Thumbnails. I actually can't even remember what the fuck was.
Start here.
It's completely evaded.
That's what happens when you don't eat your food, man.
No, honestly, it is. It's completely evaded me. But the point is, anyway, just getting back to that, and we'll finish on this. It really is just a relentless grind, and you have to just appreciate that you're going to give it years of your life, and you're going to actively look to improve and level up.
I think that's what I'm struggling with. I need to you
have to just realize you're in it for the long haul.
I know I'm I can put in more than I actually am. So I'm. Yeah,
that's interesting. What you think? You think that you look at yourself in the mirror and you think I could probably do more?
Well, I always think that anyway, but like I know I can put in more. Like I mean, it depends about how much time you're allocating. Obviously, I'm not working like full-time hours or anything, nowhere near that. But like I could be getting closer to that if I wanted to, because I have,
I've had this conversation
temporarily.
I've had this conversation before with people. Sometimes more in a fitness realm, but similarly in this realm as well. It's also just about understanding not how much someone else is doing, not how much you think you could be doing or should be doing or anything like that. It's about you literally, and I'm not even joking, I've done this multiple times because I feel like it's the only way to get true answers sometimes. I go into the mirror, I look at myself in the eyes and I just say, can I be doing more? And I just listen to the truest answer. If the answer is, I've got this, I'm running to the ground, I'm doing X, Y, Z, and I'm fatigued, and I'm not recovering enough and doing good. If that's the answer, then it's like, okay, maybe I'm doing everything.
You're right.
But more times than not, I look and I think, yeah, but I could level that up. I could make that system more efficient. I could make that system more efficient and free up more time to do this. I could do on Sunday night. I'll give you an example for me personally. On Sunday night, I know I don't really want to because it's going to get late and a big weekend, but I'm going to go back, get the podcast, chop it up, send it off to the editor so that can be sent off on Sunday. Yes, it'll take me till 2 a.m., but do I really want to do that? No, but can I be doing that? Yes, I can. And they're just the conversations I'm having when I'm looking in the mirror.
I need to do the same thing.
Because sure. you get the most honest answer. You don't get the answer that you think you should be doing, or what other people are doing, or what Gary V's doing, or what Alex Hormozzi's doing. Because you don't compare yourself. You just give yourself a very, very true evaluation. I've found personally, because you never lie to yourself. You can lie to your.
It's a very good point.
Yeah, and I think that's when you get the true answer. And more times than not, for me, and I say more times than not, every time. And I'll be real. I'm not even gonna lie. Every time I've looked, I've said, I can be doing more. Because it's not even necessarily about output sometimes. It's actually about making things more efficient or effective. So it's not that you're working, the cliche, harder, but smarter. Like I said,
very true.
How can I go about it on a Sunday where I can get my podcast right? So how can I get it to the editor so it's going to come back to me quicker so I can get the podcast scheduled all on Monday from Monday to Sunday? How can I do that? Right, I'm going to get the podcast. I'm going to clip it for him down into the segments, send it off. So then it's just the video and the sound effects. And that's how I've done it. Now on Monday, I can schedule and repost all my stuff from Monday to Sunday. And then that gives me every day to maybe just do something a little bit more creative or spend my time elsewhere on other projects, which is what I've been doing recently. So then I've been looking into the food fighters and my reach outs and my brand deals and sponsorships, because now that's running on more of an autopilot. Yeah, I've been putting out more output than I've ever put out. I'm actually doing
very smart. You're making me feel like inferior here.
No, not at all.
no, I'm taking the piss. I know.
Not at all.
You're right.
But it's just about that's all it is. It's just about re-engineering.
Yeah.
And every time I look, there's a million things to improve, and there's always going to be.
There's
and
always going to be. Yeah.
I'm nowhere even near, not even scratched the surface. It's crazy to me because sometimes you hear conversations from billionaires, and they say, "Oh, where do you think you can grow from here?" And they sort of laugh, and they just say, "I've not even got started." And sometimes you look at them and you think, "Wow, that's kind of crazy mindset." But I understand to a certain degree why they see it like that in my own personal journey, because as you learn a little bit more and then you pay off more idiot tax and then you start doing things a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently, a little bit more consistently, and then you're getting the compound interest of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years, then things just start snowballing. Then you start meeting people that are doing things at a high level, operating at a high level, picking their brains. You'll start going to events now where you're mixing with photographers, videographers, where you're picking their brains. Now you're picking the 1% in the categories, not even just you're not having the conversation. Now you're having the conversations with some of the best people in the industry. You're talking to the best interviewers, you're talking to the best fighters, whether it's the best videographers, editors, marketers, clothing, whatever it may be. And then that's just how it works. But Anyway, we could go on all day about this.
We
really.
could, yeah.
But anyway, this is what we said the other week. Like, realistically, we chop up and do what we need to do with our podcast, and we put it out in segments that people can enjoy that, but they can also come to the full thing and enjoy the full thing. And I think the beauty with ours is we can just chat about whatever we want, really, can't we? That's the beauty of it.
Speaking of whatever we want, I mean, I say whatever we want. This is what we do every week, but let's run into
That's what we want, though, realistically, isn't it?
That's why we do it. It's the meat on the bone, isn't it, really?
That's why we do it.
Let's get into the card from last night, because it was...
I like that one.
Yeah, it's good. That is good, but the card was actually pretty good as well. I didn't hate it. I thought it started off a bit slow.
I didn't hate it. Let's rewire that. I feel we can go more positive with that.
Yeah, no, all right. No, it was good. It was a good card. I was going to say, because it started off a bit slow. A few decisions here and there.
Started off slow. That first fight was a scrap.
Yeah, no. After the Fijo fight and obviously the Duncan fight as well. But there was a couple of ones sprinkled in there, which were a bit of I think dampened the sort of atmosphere a little bit. But then it was sort of the right balance, because you got, every time things started to die down, there was like a fight in there that just supercharged everyone back up in the crowd, and me on the sofa. But yeah, it was great. There was some real good fights, and I was so happy to see Paul Craig. He really impressed me, which I think that's a good one to jump into, actually, because it was definitely a topic to discuss, seeing how he was going to do at middleweight. He impressed me. He looked a lot better on the feet. I think that was a bit of a problem he had at light heavyweight, was he was so bit too static, a bit heavy, just not mobile enough, and not enough variety in his shots. And he talked about it in the post-fight interview, actually. The use of the body kick, which was used to great effect there, really impressed me. And, of course, the grappling battle was brilliant. I love that so much. Nearly getting caught in that triangle, and then escaping that armbar as well. It was brilliant. And then just returning after, and then getting it to mount, and it was great. I'm rambling a little bit, but I loved it. I love Paul Craig.
No. You're feeling passionate for the fight. I like it.
I'm forgetting the stare down, man.
You're getting heated. I like it.
That stare down was that was one of I was actually watching it with my brother, who doesn't really watch UFC, and he was loving it as well. And I was loving it. That stare down was, when did we ever get that? It was great. I loved it. So hopefully that's the start of big things for Paul. I did see, though, I don't know if you saw this, he did call out Bo Nickel, which is, I don't know about that one, but fair play to him, because if anyone's going to call out Bo Nickel, it's going to be him, because I don't think he's scared of anybody.
Wow. This, as you were going, I was just adding on in my head more things of why this fight and why this win was so great. First and foremost, wanted to see Paul Craig in the middleweight division for the longest time. Yeah. Second, Andre Muniz is a crazy man, thinking he's going to catch Paul Craig in a triangle, or at least catch him to a point where he's going to submit. That is not going to happen. Thirdly, the intensity that Paul Craig brings to every fight is absolutely electrifying. And when he walks out with his tartan and his face painted, and then he walks into the cage and he's staring Andre Muniz down, and he stood his battle and they stared off between each other. And there's this element of honor, in terms of there's nothing malicious about it. It's just genuine, not only pride, not only integrity, but actual just fierce, deep competitiveness. And that's one thing that you get when you watch Paul Craig. And he's had some ups and he's had some downs in the UFC. But the reason why everyone always cheers for him is because he's so likable, first and foremost. But second of all, you always know that he's going to bring it with everything that he has. And that's what makes his jiu-jitsu so nasty, because when he goes for submissions, he doesn't try and get you into little positions and find a He throws them on you and he attacks them, and he attacks them hard. And we've seen that so many times. And that's what makes him so dangerous. And I'm sitting at home and I'm watching it. I'm lying. I'm not sitting at home. I had my friends watching it. And I'm even lying about that. I wasn't even at my friends. I was backstage waiting for my friend to walk out to his fight. And I'm watching Paul Craig. And I've got a smile on my face because in the pre-fight breakdown we done, I said I would love Paul to let his striking go, but also let's see a similar style to that of Aljamain Sterling, where you use those big hooks, so we've seen him that he likes, and then add on his kicking game as well. And he done exactly that. He done exactly that, word for word. He had that beautiful southpaw body kick. That was really nice. And he used all of that to then close the distance as well and find his range that way. And then he got to his body lock and then started pairing it with his jiu-jitsu. And he looked nasty. And it's
very
like,
good.
This is so fun at middleweight because we've got someone that can grapple and he's now adding on his striking that he can do. We spoke about it before. He's got good striking. He's just never had that confidence. Now he's putting it together at a bit of a funky style like Aljamain with his grappling. And it's like, wow, we've got a player at 185.
Yeah.
The Bo Nickel call out, I think is genius. I think it's genius.
It's smart.
Because Bo Nickel, if you know anything about Bo Nickel, you know that that man is going to be at the pinnacle of this sport for the next 10 years. If nothing goes wrong, for the next 10 years, Bo Nickel is going to be at the pinnacle or thereabouts of this sport. So if you're going to fight him, you want to fight him at 4-0 if you're Paul Craig. If you think you're going to stick around at middleweight, you may as well get him now. Because he's had the least experience he's ever going to have. He's not gone past about 2 minutes. And Paul Craig's a very seasoned veteran. So if I'm Paul Craig, I'm probably going to call out Bo Nickel as well. I'm thinking, right, let's get this done and dusted. I'm going for this title. I'm going to get some hype as well. I'm going to choke this guy out when he's trying to take me down. And then I'm going for the belt. And I think it's quite a smart move.
Especially when no one else is going to do it. Let's be real.
Yeah,
no one else is going to be calling him.
Because everyone's like, what? He's calling out Bo Nickel.
It did actually, it did surprise me actually because he actually, I think, besides maybe Tom, I think he got the biggest pop of the night after he won. Because and you know, he is a draw to the UK crowd, but compared to some of the other guys, it did surprise me.
But you have to remember sometimes, I forget this. I know he's a veteran. I know he's been around for a very long time. But he has the second most fights of any active British fighter. He's got 15, or that would be 16 fights in the UFC, which is an obscene milestone. And you look at what he's done throughout his career, and realistically, Paul Craig has overachieved even up to this point. He's done some really incredible things with his career, not only some really impressive performances and wins and just amazing nights, not only in terms of the rankings, but in terms of how many ranked wins, things like the Shogun Hua win, going out to Brazil and fighting. Paul Craig's had an incredible career. Ankalaev, of course, in London. Then you got Nikita Krylov in London.
Oh, beautiful.
I mean, Paul Craig has had an incredible career when I actually reflect on it. Well. The Jamal Hill win, of course, over a champion. So we're talking multiple championship fighter wins. That's incredible. So the fact that Paul Craig is now even refining his game even more, seems to be even more dialed in, and he's going for the title 185, that excites me.
Likewise, I can't wait. He does look, I mean, I said obviously the dropping down a division in a lot of ways can be, I mean, the thing is, for a lot of fighters, it can be quite negative. The chin goes a little bit. You can't take shots as well. But on the plus side, for a guy like Craig, he's so much looser, so much more mobile. And you just saw the difference within the first minute. It was so noticeable. Like against it was against Ozdemir, wasn't it? In before the Johnny Walker fight, it just looked very, as I said earlier, static, just slow, just one step behind. And I think if you put those two both in the same fight down at middleweight, it goes completely differently. I think you've got he looks like a new breed. I'm very optimistic. I'm not gonna sit here. I'm not gonna jump the gun and say he's gonna fight for the title soon. But I'm excited. At the end of the day, I'm excited to see where he goes.
I need to get this off my chest quickly because this irked me to no end. Because I'm watching Mark Diakese get headbutted,
mate, ridiculous,
and then submitted. Two things that I want to preface before I go on to the main thing, which annoyed me the most, which is actually very infuriating, just as a fan, objectively, not the fact it was just Mark Diakese in itself. Number one, if the referee did not see it, which it appeared he did not, he cannot call it. So it's actually the correct decision that he allowed it to continue. Because if you don't see it, you're not meant to call it. So if he did not see that head clash, which is very easy to not, because they're very hard to pick up sometimes, then absolutely fine. There's no problem there whatsoever. But I'll get to why there's also things in place about that. Number two, Joe Alvarez, the referee has not waved it off. your opponent is down on the floor. For all he knows, he may not have even felt that land, the heat of the moment, the adrenaline. He may not even realise. Maybe he did realise, but the referee hasn't stopped it. What are you going to do? He chokes him out. There's no problem there. But the reason those two things are absolutely fine to happen are because there's a third step in place where there's a replay official that sits cage side and is privy to a slow motion which can then overturn the result. And there's precedence for this, not only a couple of weeks ago when we had Bobby Green and Jared Gordon. Bobby Green got the win, then they overturned it to a no contest instantly there because they watched it back on the replay. So there's precedence for it. There's a replay judge there. Why wasn't that a no contest? I have no idea. Absolutely fine that the referee missed it. Absolutely fine Joe Alvarez followed up and done what he needed to do. Not fine they didn't go to a simple referee and clear it up within 5 seconds. It took one replay. You saw the head clash, led to a concussive sort of just takedown where he choked him out. And it was very, very clear that that was the start to the end. And it just perplexed me. I have no idea what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, you could see the light switch off there after that headbutt. You know, Diakiese, he looked. I actually going to give you credit from last week because you gave a lot of mention to how good Diakiese's wrestling had gotten, and he showed that in the second round. Was having a lot of success. I believe it was in the second round. He took Alvarez down. Was not necessarily doing a huge amount of damage, but the control was there and it was good. And he was winning the majority of that round, I believe.
I want to just say quickly, just to interrupt you on that point.
So go for it.
On the wrestling, the reason I say that is because I've been 2 feet away and watched with my own eyes what he does to people in the wrestling department when he gets there. And I'm talking people that are above his weight class as well, well above his weight class, 2, 3 weight classes above. I've seen him do it to people before. Just that body lock. Once he gets his hands locked, I don't think there's anyone really in the lightweight division that's going to be able to just outstrength him in that position. I don't think there are when he gets his hands, but he's so strong there. But
he proved it.
So when I saw Joe Alvarez, I knew he was a great striker, and I knew he was a great grappler. Very good grappler, of course. We spoke about his submission game. But there was I knew there was going to be a strength discrepancy, because there's going to be a strength discrepancy with most people that Mark Diakiese comes up against, because he's so strong. He really is. First time I saw him, he's a really physically just big boy. Like, he's just solid.
Yeah.
And then what you can see as well, like when he gets his hands together, he's got such a strong back as well. His grips are just so strong. People at lightweight, it's just, that's going to be tricky for you. But sorry, anyway, going back to your point.
No, agree. I'm saying he was growing into that fight, which is what makes it even more disappointing, because I think he started maybe a little bit of a step behind.
He was taking over.
Yeah, he started a little bit of a step behind,
a little bit.
And then you could see the tide was turning, and then as soon as that headbutt went, I mean, it was a matter of seconds, wasn't it? And suddenly he's on the ground and he's straight in a Darce choke, and it's just like, okay, fine, nothing against Alvarez, but that's down to the officiating, you know, not down. Fair enough, the ref didn't see it, as you said, but the official. I don't know what the team is. They've got a name for it, but
explain this to me.
It's poor, isn't it?
But because this is the thing in MMA, I'm so forgiving usually because it's so fast paced. There's so much going on. The crowd, the noise. It's hard to like dial in, find the right spot as a ref. There's blind spot. All of this, I get all of that. So there's a lot of room. You don't want a lot of room for error, but you can sometimes give room for error.
Yeah.
When the fight has finished, and you have ultimately, to some extent, infinite time to sit there and watch one segment replay, why is that not happening? Why did that not happen? Because if I said this and it never happened before, then you'd say, well, they never done that, and that's just not what they do. It happened a couple of months ago with Bobby Green and Jared Gordon. There's precedence. So I just don't understand it. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I'll give
and I say precedence because I've watched so much Suits that I know that they just come with cases that have happened before to show what the repercussion should be. And in this case, the repercussion should have been a replay official to deem it a no contest. And the reason I'm so riled up about it is, of course, it's just upsetting to see that's happening to anyone. That's gutting. But you also realise and see a little bit more firsthand the money that goes into these camps, paying these different. He's gone out to America for this camp. He's gone to London for this camp. He's gone to north of England for this camp. He's gone to all these different places, stayed in all these, trained for all these different people, all these different coaches, one-to-ones, training sessions, all these different things, all these different costs, all this different time, all this different, and then the end result is they didn't replay one frame to get a result, which was even a no contest, which isn't even a better result really than a loss. It's quite similar, but my point still remains. You'd still rather a no contest than a loss, you know? So
people forget that as well, how much these fighters put in, not just physically or even mentally, but again, as you said, monetarily, if that's a word.
It very much is.
Yeah.
It is.
You know, and compounding all of that together, you know, it's so winning or losing, right? Especially in, you know, the UFC, where there's a lot of contention on fighter pay, and a lot of fighters maybe aren't being paid as much as they should be. You know, for a lot of people, it's life and death is not the phrase I'd use, but that same sort of idea of, you know, where they go in their life for the next
is a fair way to,
you know,
to
it might,
put it.
Yeah, you know what? I'll stick with it because it means a lot because these guys don't get paid enough. So it does suck when you see someone robbed of potentially a victory that they could have got, which I think in Diakiese's case was a real possibility. And I want to a cheeky little segue here. Other fighters that probably got something taken away from them that they shouldn't. Davy Grant. I don't know if you watched the fight, but that was a terrible decision. I think it was a close fight, but the third round, Grant was absolutely just, the output was far higher than, what was it? Was it Quinones? No, Marcos, sorry. And I just to not get the moment you hear Bruce Buffer say the word judge, the first word he says is judge, and you know the fighter you want to win or expect to win is going to lose, because you know that likely means split decision, and it likely means it's going to go the other way. Because again, it was just another example of poor judging, because it was a clear 29-28, and to not give a guy like Davey who was starting to really kick in some momentum, you know, in his career. He's had some good wins, and even in the losses he's had, they've been very competitive and good losses. You know, guys like Marlon Vera, Adrian Yanez.
That was a close fight.
Yeah, exactly.
He's been on the bad end of some close fights.
Exactly, and it's another one of these cases. I mean, this one, it was just clearly Davey. It was I struggled to see, and I think if you saw the discourse on the social media just space on pretty much unanimously agreeing that Grant won that, and I'm sure the verdict MMA score average was the same. It's just, and I don't want to. It's like, I don't want to beat the dead horse of talking about judging and what we need to do about it, because nothing's really going to change right now. And maybe that's something to.
And we can have that convo every week, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
We can have that convo every week.
And really that is a testament to how bit of a problem it is.
But you know what? I'll just say one thing real quick though. You cannot categorically, factually, and no one can tell me otherwise, score a fight watching the fight live next to the fight. It is impossible. It's impossible. You shouldn't do it, and you can't do it, and no one should do that. That is not where officials should be watching a fight. It is absolutely preposterous. When you sit cage side watching a fight,
different game.
It sometimes doesn't even look anything like the fight actually looked like. It just doesn't. Being at Cage Warriors this weekend, and obviously being at Supreme Championships, I was just quite fortunate that I was literally on the cage, which is where the judges sit, right? Some of these fights, I watched the actual fights back on my phone. They look nothing. It's like I've seen another fight of it. It's like I've seen two fights, completely different things. It's so weird sometimes.
I know what you mean.
You just catch different angles. Sometimes angles you can only see certain punches, or sometimes you see punches that other things don't. But then again, on a screen, you just get every angle perfectly 4K in front of you. Objectively, you can watch it with no sound. You can watch it in a room, just dialed in, every angle perfect. The best view for a fight is on the TV. 100%. With the camera team and the camera work that you have in the UFC, 100%. The best way to analyze or strategically look at a fight is on a screen. There is no two ways about that.
I mean, most importantly in the grappling exchanges, because
100%.
I mean, I'm sure you can you can speak to that. Obviously, every time it goes to the ground, you can't see shit, generally speaking. It's very difficult, yeah.
For example, i.e., integrated example, Harry Hardwick this weekend.
Oh,
I was on
beautiful.
an angle where I saw it go to the ground, and I saw sort of one hook and an arm by his neck. And I thought, oh, he's got a rear naked choke. Nice. I thought he was probably going to get a stoppage. I watch it back. It's a slick submission. And that's just absolutely pounced on by Hardwick. And it's a beautiful setup to it.
Yeah, I saw that.
But I just didn't see any of it, really. I didn't see those nuances because of the view that I had, which wouldn't have been too dissimilar to a view of a judge. Just because of the eye level sometimes you get, it just misses things above. So sometimes you miss the hands or vice versa. So it's super weird. So, yeah, anyway, that's a bit of a side tangent. We've got so much to talk about. We need to rattle through a few, don't we?
I will say, actually, credit to Lerone Murphy, because I spoke last week about he needed to level up a little bit. He looked a little bit just behind the mark a little bit. Not gun shy, but wasn't doing enough.
No, I hear you.
Especially with how good he is technically in every aspect. He needed to just step up his game, put the hours in, and I think he clearly did that, because against the guy like Josh Kulabau, who's
talented,
very, very talented fighter. It was a good win. Really impressed me. Put me back on, the side of, okay, he's got the ability here. He can go far, because in that Santos fight, I had some doubts about maybe perhaps on the mental side, but that really, I was really happy to see how he did that. That body kick is beautiful, really sneaky. Yeah. And it's those sort of piercing shots that, that hit the liver there that can really just disable you. And that's clearly what went down there.
I think as well, it goes to say that if a fighter loses, or even if a fighter wins, but they just don't look that great, we have to remember, sitting at home as fans, we look at the 0.000000001% of this sport, which is the final product walking into the cage and fighting each other. That's the smallest aspect of this sport. There are so many more hours and variables and different things going on before that can even happen. And sometimes things are just maybe a little bit out of place. Or sometimes they just, very simply put, don't show up their best. Even if they do win, they just don't show up their best. It's like when you go for a run. You don't run your best time every week, even if you're looking to set a PB on a specific time. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes you just feel a little bit flat. Sometimes you feel off. Your legs feel a little bit heavy. Maybe you didn't sleep as well. Whatever it may be. The only reason I say that is just because maybe we have to look at that fight, and even though, there was some sort of cracks in Lerone's game, but ultimately he won, which is the most impressive thing. And to win on an off night is even more impressive.
Yeah.
You look at people like Volkanovski, they do that fantastically well, win on an off night, and he doesn't have many.
He does not have many.
He does not have many, but he has done, and we've seen it do it against pound for pound's best in sort of Max Holloway. But the fact that he'd done that, but then also we have to think that was a last minute opponent. It was chucked in. It was a new style. It was someone that was like fighting for a sort of UFC, their contract and their career and their name and notoriety, big opportunity, and quite a big name in the general scape of getting that on your debut. So, yeah, there's a lot going into it. So, like you said, it was good to see him get a good win, because Josh Kulabau is very, very skilled and very talented. And is actually... And that doesn't go to say Josh is he's not any good. That just goes to show that Lerone is really at a level where he can actually get over the humps that are people like Josh Kulabau, that are the new wave of just good mixed martial artists that can go everywhere, push a pace, they can strike, they can wrestle, they can defensively grapple, and they're just very good. So
it's sort of
that's a really
like
good
that unranked sort of marsh of
that are just coming
guys
up,
you've got to wade through, who are good challenges, and you kind of just have to literally fight through them to get through to that sort of next.
They're tough as well. These people that haven't taken a lot of damage, they're lively, they're bright, they've got a lot of testosterone in their early 20s. They're training hard, and their S&C is on point. And spending some time sometimes with fighters that are getting towards the back end of their career is interesting, looking at them in training and speaking to them and listening to hear how they have to make adaptations to deal with that, because they have to acknowledge and understand that they can't compete physically in terms of And I mean that by doing 2-3 hard sessions a day sometimes, or doing strength and conditioning before they got up and go here and do this and do that. Sometimes these people that are getting towards the end of their career can't do it. It's about how they manage their sort of their body, if you like, and it's quite interesting, and how to maintain their skills ultimately. And
I'll give you a perfect example of that,
they
actually.
keep their go for it.
Andre Arlovski, perfectly adapted,
example.
I think, to getting older. Heavyweight's a different bit of a ball game, but it's still a good example because
That's a great example.
He realized he couldn't, he was just missing the mark just a little bit, and he adjusted his game, became a bit more technical, less of a slugger and a brawler, and played a bit more of a points game, which to a lot of people, he doesn't care about the fans really.
No, he's done everything.
I don't mean it in that sense. Yeah, exactly. He's got nothing to prove, so he's only got to prove to himself that he can still hang with the new blood, and he's done that loads of times.
Can.
Yeah,
he certainly can. But let's talk about new blood, and let's talk about Nathaniel Wood, because this was a tough test. And for people that don't know Andre Fili, they should know him, because he is one of the most seasoned fighters in that featherweight division. When you have a look down Andre Fili's resume, he has been in there with the best of the best, pound for pound, great fighters. When you have a look at that featherweight division, he has really fought them all. He comes from a good gym. He's got a funky style. He's not the easiest to prepare for, just because he probably does a lot of things in there and gives you a lot of looks that he's just seasoned veteran self knows. And he's just making those slight tweaks and adjustments in the fight, and it probably looks a little bit different to how you thought came out. I'll be interested to speak to Nathaniel to see what he sort of thought of it, but it didn't go smooth. It didn't go smooth for Nathaniel.
No, it did not.
As much as I would have liked it to have been a clean fight, I think that's always important, just to remind people what you're capable of, what you can get through facing that adversity, because I've seen some terrible comments as well. I say terrible, but I don't think that Nathaniel, I don't think there's going to be other people sitting at home getting upset about them, but people commenting on the videos of when he's speaking, obviously, about his mental health and things that he's going through, and people saying, how's this person going to win in his fights? He's going to get, any man's going to be able to mentally break him. And I think I understand why an ignorant fan that has no context or nuance would say that. Of course, that's a very just...
It's an easy way to go.
It's a very cheap narrative. Yeah. It's low hanging fruit. It's not very well thought through, and it's not very well understood. And I'm not even coming from a position of hate. I'm just a compassion of maybe where these people don't actually understand the differences. Because I've even personally spoke to Nathaniel before in interviews where he's said, not in relation to any of conversation of that, where he said, no man will ever mentally break me inside of the cage. And you go back and watch his fights, and there's clear indication to see that every time that he fights. And the obvious example is always the Josh Reed in Cage Warriors. But it's a very good example because of the intensity and the magnitude of that fight as well, and what it played out on his career. And again, we saw that. So I'm sort of happy that happened at that time. So people saw that. Don't get it confused. I mean,
it happens to everybody.
Don't get it confused.
A scenario like that happens to everybody, Like, you think about it, no one's immortal in this game. I don't even think Jon Jones is immortal, we don't get to that debate. But, there's nothing wrong with, getting caught and rallying back. That doesn't make you any lesser of a fighter. It makes you more of one, really. And, even the best fighters, in my opinion, are the ones that when they face that adversity and they get, on the wrong end of a shot, and they get knocked down and they get up and they rally and they fight even better than they were before that. And, guys like Volkanovski, obviously, is probably the best example against Holloway. Knocked down twice, lost 2 rounds right at the end of him, and then rallied back and took that fight
perfectly
to him. People can talk about the decision, but he rallied back enough to make it a close fight.
On the worst night of his life.
That already is enough. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's great experience for Nathaniel. As we said before, he's young in the game. Still got, just about to enter his prime, really. He's only 30. Lots to prove. And I saw a lot of discourse, people saying maybe he's a little bit too small for the weight division. Moving up to featherweight was a bit of an issue. There is a point there in the sense that the reach is something he's going to have to learn to overcome, because that's going to be a challenge he's going to face in a lot of his fights going forward, just by the law of averages. But that's nothing he can't work on. And the fact he's so fast. He genuinely probably is the fastest guy in that division. I would say he is like lightning. So it's a matter of improving the skills he's already got, and then just patching up those holes, and strategizing a little bit better, because I think there was some things he could improve on. I don't think we need to. That's not up for debate really.
What thing did you see that you would have?
It was the reach he struggled with, because I think, and also maybe not setting up. He was relying on his speed maybe a little bit too much. I felt. I think throwing those leg kicks out. He had success with them, no doubt, but that was the first knockdown straight away. A lot of guys do this. A good example is Dominic. Yeah, exactly. Dominic Reyes against Ryan Spann. Throwing him out just naked, without a setup, without a feint from a jab, or off the end of a combination. You're running that risk of getting caught with a straight down the pipe. And that did happen. But yeah, he impressed me a lot. I was worried that second, when you can tell when a fighter really gets hurt, right? That second knockdown, he sort of froze up.
I thought that was the end. I thought that was close to the end then, just because of what it looked like visually. And that's why I was sitting backstage, and it was just as my friend's about to walk out. And of course, I'm doing the filming for the whole thing. So I'm sitting there with him getting warmed up. I didn't want to distract him and talk fights and show him anything. So I was just watching it with Lon, one of his obviously main sparring partners. And it was a nervy second round. It was a nervy second round because he got caught, and he got caught hard. And you could see it. But he fought. He did. He fought to the next position. And then once he got to that position, he fought to the next position. And then the next position. And what did I say coming up into the build-up to this? Defensively, he always makes the right decisions. And he is always defensively sound with his grappling. And to do that whilst being hurt is impressive as well. Because even when he was then rocked, he was still creating shields with his legs. He still wasn't allowing him to just sit in his guard completely. Even when he did, he wasn't allowing it to happen. He was still trying to fight against it. And he was active with his guard, exactly. He then managed to escape, slip out, get on top even for a little bit as well. So, yeah, like you said, it was impressive to watch him rally. And I think the thing that is so exciting about Nathaniel now in that featherweight division is that he's had a career which is sort of set him up very gradually but very consistently to the higher level guys in that featherweight division. And I think slowly but surely, just a fight and a step at a time, he's been given a different test in that division. And it's really nice for the evolution of his career and his game and who he's going to potentially fight next, which is hopefully a ranked opponent. Because I think when he goes in there now, he's going to have had a lot of different looks from so many different fighters. When you look at a Rosa, you've got the experience and the awkwardness and the toughness of a Rosa. You look at a Charles Jourdain, where you have the flashiness and the striking brilliance, and he can just pull off crazy things. He can pull off flying knees or guillotines. Yeah. He's got good skills. A very legitimate fighter at featherweight. Then he's fighting the likes of Andre Fili and coming back from adversity and beating a very well-versed veteran who's been in there with absolutely everyone and typically always has close fights. And now you look at the next step of his career, and it's like he's been in there with a little different look. Even if you go back to his losses, you look at people like Jon Dodson. He's one of the most experienced heads in the game.
Very correct. Yeah,
and I've heard,
no shame in that.
I've heard about Nave talk about that fight sometimes, and even some things that he took away and now he would even do differently, and things he would implement, and where he's sort of learned and grown from there. So there's so many tests that he's had along his career, and how many good level guys he's fought in just veterans of the game in a lot of them. And then obviously you pair that and partner that with his corner, where you have Ashley Grimshaw and Brad Pickett as well, where they're just such experienced heads in the game.
Oh, I actually want to... Do you mind just... If I go for it. Something I love that I picked up on was... I really wish I could remember the specifics. Oh, no, that's it, right. So, Fili's corner, in between the second and third round, was saying, right, he's going to be ready, get ready to, shoot, go for a shot, shoot for that takedown. Look to use your wrestling. That was the game plan going into the third. And then when they cut over to Pickett, to Brad, he perfectly, he said, right, they're gonna, he literally predicted it perfectly. What their game plan was, and I was just like, that is such good, IQ and knowledge you only get from just having years in the game. And I love that little moment that he just completely deciphered what their plan was going into the third round. It was brilliant to see.
It's giving me goosebumps a little bit. It's actually giving me goosebumps a little bit, just as you say that, because it's so true. And seeing, sometimes people tell me, and sometimes I'll speak to people that obviously, in this case with Brad, would have been massive fans or would have been just watching him on the TV and come out and be one of their favourite fighters. And speaking to people and seeing, obviously because I came into the sport late and I didn't have that earlier affiliation. Course, yeah. So seeing what he means to other people, also just personally, seeing what an entire life of just hard work and just leveling up and being around the highest level guys in the world and coaching, just seeing it all culminated into corner work and advice after rounds, in between rounds. It's so interesting because it's never anything super complicated. It's never anything super flashy. It's never anything you haven't heard before. It's never anything I couldn't probably tell you. But it's always exactly what it needs to be, when it needs to be, and how it needs to be delivered. And there is just so much value to take from these fighters, from having people like Brad Pickett and Ashley Grimshaw in your corner, because getting that information so concisely and so accurately and delivered so perfectly at the right time is just absolutely invaluable. And if you have a look at the fights from across the year and some of the most impressive finishes and fights that they've had, you can hear the corner work before you even hear the finish. Whether that's Lon's spinning back kick in the Cage Warriors and it's Ash calling out for the finish, or the submission that he helped set up with Simeon Powell, or whether it was even the knee bar in Ryzen, or whether it was a number of these crazy things.
Leon Edwards high kick.
The Leon Edwards high kick is obviously another example of coaching as well, going into the Birmingham and Renegade, which we mentioned last week as well. And it's just absolutely invaluable. And looking at the UK scene, looking across the weekend in terms of Cage Warriors and the UFC, it's a really exciting time in terms of the experience and knowledge that's in the game now, in the grassroots, all the way to the top. And all that knowledge is just compounding. It's really actually quite exciting for the scene. So, yeah. Let's jump into...
I'll jump you.
Go on.
Just to put a dampener on it, as we're talking about the success of English fighters.
I was going to go there.
The British MMA scene. Let's run into the co-main event, because it was a bit of... I don't want to say same old story, but we talked about last week about how important it was for Molly to fix up those grappling holes, because that's where she struggled in the past against, again, someone like Gillian Robertson, who I said before is, no shame in that.
No, yeah, she's a specialist.
It's where she needs to work, right? And when you're fighting someone like Stoliarenko, who, no disrespect, but she's a lot more one-dimensional, at least prior to that fight. I was actually very impressed with her striking.
I need to interrupt and say entirely one-dimensional. She had 6 finishes, and I believe...
All by armbar.
Armbar. No, that's not a little bit one-dimensional. She was very
impressive, though.
That is entirely one-dimensional.
But she was impressive, though. She did actually impress me on the feet. But when you're preparing for someone like that, you really need to put in the graft in that area, because Molly knows how good she is on the feet. She might not be the best in the division, but she has ample skills, and especially her boxing, is very strong. So that's not really where she needs to work on. She can't, and in this game, you can't afford to rely on that either. You need to be active and at least credible in every area. So it was disappointing, because I know someone like Molly, she will take that loss hard. And they spoke about that on the TNT or BT, whatever you want to call it these days. Sort of post talk thing. It was, it was disappointing, but I hope she can bounce back for that. And I know she's going to get a lot of flack for that, which is a bit unfair. I think a lot of the hate she receives is a lot because of Paddy, really, and the whole drama he's had with Ariel and the Jared Gordon loss. I think she just naturally caught some of that flack because they are a bit of a pair. So again, we talked about how important the mental game is. That's when you're compounding that with all the bombardment from social media. People forget these guys and girls. They're human, and it's difficult, especially losing in that way that quickly in front of your home crowd. That is so hard to recover from. So I do hope she's doing all right. But on the technical side of things, again, I'm not gonna shy away from that because it was a poor way to lose. I think she was in a position where she could have escaped. Stoliarenko was against the cage. She couldn't flatten herself out for the armbar. Couldn't fully extend, but Molly chose to roll into it, which basically gave her free rein to get the tap, which was a poor move. I felt it was more out of desperation or panic, perhaps. Yeah.
Bit, yeah.
So, maybe just that the IQ slips a little bit there, and you just make the rash decision. And I think that's probably what happened, and that can happen. That is the fight game.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because on one hand, it could be a case of where she prepared very hard, but maybe did she put enough hours into preparing for all the different positions of the armbar? Maybe, maybe not. Or maybe it's a case of, which could very well be the case, of with a lot of people that come into grappling a little bit later, and if they come into it as a striker, it's never going to be as well versed. So, not saying that you're always going to make mistakes and that's always going to happen, but sometimes, like what you said, what happens is it's not necessarily that you don't know what to do or how to address it, or even you look back and you think, oh my goodness, why did I do that? But sometimes what happens in those exchanges is because it's on your second background, there is a little bit of that panic, and it just, for that split 0.1% second, you make the wrong decision. All of a sudden you've just jumped and you've given her the position, and that's the end of the fight, right? And you give someone like Stoliarenko your arm, and she's going to snap that off and take it home for dinner and put it in a 6 out of 6 armbar submissions. And that's just the truth. So it could even be a case that Molly knew what to do there, and she knew how to stay safe and how to dress it, and she's watching that back and she's absolutely kicking herself. Or maybe it could be a case of maybe she just didn't prepare well enough all those different positions. I don't know about that. Also, obviously an upset. No, just I was going to say, obviously an upsetting loss, and it gets to a point as well. It gets to a point where, as fans, obviously enjoy the sport, be passionate and whatnot, but ultimately, whether a fighter loses, whether a fighter wins, whether a fighter does anything, and you can support the sport however you want, but you have to remember at the end of the day, however you view it, however they view it, it is just someone doing their job. Just the black and white of it is someone doing their job, and someone may have micro succeeded or micro failed on a small level one of the times in their career. Don't overdeep that. Remember that at the core of everything, because you look through these comment sections, and there was a little bit of a sobering moment, to be perfectly honest, on Friday when Paddy was on that UFC interview and he was at the front. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Paddy's always just been a shining example of a perfect person. Everything he's ever said, and he's never wound anyone or patrolled anyone or said something he shouldn't or been perfect or anything like that. Of course not. We're all human, and definitely him. He's gonna bite back occasionally, and most people probably would. But I remember him just saying, someone asking the question, oh, do you take any notice or do you do anything about those comments? And he just there was a bit of a absent look in his stare, and he just sort of gazed off into the distance a little bit and just sort of said, if I'd done that, I wouldn't be here. And that's so true, because I've been in his comment sections many, many, many times and seeing the people and what they write and how extreme it is and how vulgar it is and how explicit it is really horrible. And yes, of course, you can ignore it and look past it and not go on your comments and whatever else. But it consumes every time you go on your phone and your notifications and what people are saying. And they just say, you need to kill yourself or end yourself and all of these different things, and repetitively. And he was right in saying that when he came out and done that post-fight speech about mental health, how many people came out and supported that and said it was an incredible thing and all of this, which is great. And it was good to see the support and people getting behind that. But then on another hand, 2 weeks later, he loses a close fight. And I know there's controversy in the media as well behind that. Make what you will of that. But you can disagree with someone and what they've done. That's absolutely fine. But then to completely flip and then to be the exact thing that you were saying you shouldn't be doing a couple of weeks ago and be writing those sort of messages online, that doesn't make sense. So we have to sort of we don't have to pick a lane here. We have to drop a lane, quite honestly. That's the truth of the matter, because it is shocking. But at the end of the day, nothing's going to change. Like, nothing is going to change.
No, very true.
There's no point in putting time and attention into it. But it's just crazy to see sometimes.
You have to remember, the overwhelming majority of these people haven't trained in any of these disciplines, let alone step foot in a cage or on the mat, anything like that. And
or in any capacity in the sport, you know,
they don't even like that exactly
even know what a training session may look like for a person on a day to day.
And I don't want to, you know, speak on my personal experiences too much, but it's when you're in a situation like that, getting caught in an armbar, it's I'm not sure whether this is a case of not enough experience, or you know, or but personally, it was when I'm sparring and I get caught in an armbar per se, and what it used to happen, right, when the first few times it would happen to the people who I know are good at it, again, as I said, the initial reaction is just to panic, it's to freak out. And what a lot of people make the mistake of, and I did make that mistake quite often, is they lurch backwards. You know, they want to pull out, they want to get that arm away. But what you're actually doing by doing that is you're straightening the arm out, right? Because if they've got it from the bottom and you're trying to jerk away and create that distance, you're actually just straightening your arm out, making it easier for them. Sort of, exactly. Yeah. So maybe it was a case of that. It was a bit of panic, and I think that was there. The role, it was just sort of, okay, I need to get out of this situation. I'm not sure, but so there could be a testament to maybe, again, as you said, not enough experience on the mats. I don't know.
You know,
but
who's,
again, it's
who's
not
a master to watch for this?
Hit me with it.
If you go over to Nicky Rodriguez and go watch some of his instructionals about back escapes or armbar escapes, he has one called the Hitchhiker. Well, I don't believe it's his, but it goes through the Hitchhiker escape.
Hitchhiker escape, yeah.
And it's crazy high level that what those guys do, and they have just made jiu-jitsu super engaging for me. I've got so heavy into jiu-jitsu recently, just like watching it and studying it and understanding different escapes and positions and counters and whatnot. And even I'm just going off on a side tangent, but I'm just getting into it. But it's even when I go
I don't blame you.
I go to training on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to film. I'll be sitting next to Ash, who's quite literally one of the best grappling coaches you're going to find in Europe. Like, very, very well documented. And I'm just picking his brain. Okay, why are you doing that? Okay, is that to get leverage there? Okay, is that because that's a percentage move, or is that? And I'm just picking his brain and learning so many things. And again, it's the reps that they've had in the game, and it's also their sort of characteristic, but they just very concise and very sharpened. And it's almost that's how you realise how high level that knowledge is because it can be dumbed down to a 4-year-old.
The simplest level.
And understood. Yeah. And that's when you realise someone's got knowledge in something because they can...
It's just hours on the mat. Yeah, it really is. A lot of it is just drilling and drilling and drilling until you get that right. And a lot of it doesn't take that long. Some of it will come naturally, and it's like, why did I struggle so much with it? And then you realise the improvements you've made. Like, as I said, just going back to what my experiences of just, you know, accidentally putting myself even worse into the armbar. And then for nowadays, it's like if you get caught in an armbar per se, you know, you're like, okay, I know what's coming now, so I'm ready to sort of employ any technique that I need to use, you know. So instead, like if someone armbars you from bottom, it's like, okay, let's close that gap.
Yeah.
Let's go into them. Let's make the angle awkward as possible. And there's just the gradual like just advancement of your knowledge of the game, and it's just. I love it. It's this. I'm rambling.
You know,
I'm getting passionate. The
reason I smiled is because I'm sitting here thinking, as you're saying all of this, I'm thinking the way I'm seeing it is down the line where we probably have a physical location for a podcast studio somewhere.
Absolutely,
it's probably going to be a little physical space, and it's going to have a nice, cool little setup with some rolling mats, and then people that come on the podcast, people
my
go
God.
for a little roll as well. We'll get the Rotolo brothers on. We'll get a few of the B team members. Mate, I'm being deadly serious. That's going to happen eventually. Yeah, for sure. For absolute sure. There's a few people that obviously, well, there's loads of people would get on. It'd be fun. But yeah, no, let's segue straight into it. Because we've got one fight that we need to talk about, and then we've got to get stuck into a big card. So, do you want to start or shall I?
I'll run it. Why not?
You want to start or shall
I mean, you know, I'll go. You know how much I love Tom. Again, as I said, my first video was on him. I was going to say my first love was Tom. Well, honestly, he kind of is. No.
I'm glad someone else feels the same way.
He really is that guy, and he just is that guy. And I had the utmost confidence he was gonna win. And you know, there's always, it doesn't matter how confident you are of a fighter's ability and what they're gonna do. There's always a bit of nerves because at the end of the day, it's mixed martial arts. Anything can happen, especially at heavyweight, right? And just that first high kick he threw, and I was like, wow, it's over, isn't it? And then he started moving. You've seen Rocky, right? He started moving like Apollo Creed in there, you know, or Tyson Fury. And I was like, this is just, what are we watching here? And he said it himself. He's not back. He's just different. And whether you're talking about that mentally, but I'm thinking more on the physical side, just the way he moves, it's just, he's evolving so much. Compare it to the Volkov fight, which even then, I have so much high praise for in that performance. He just looked a level above, so loose, and just darting in and out. And then, oh my God, that combination, that elbow with and then the left hook, and then the 1-2. It was just beautiful. You can't name anyone that's doing that heavyweight besides him. You really can't. And I know we said last week how confident we are, and we're probably a bit outspoken that he'd beat Jones, but it just, that even more reaffirms it to me.
What did you see what did you see there that made me look like a fool for saying that?
No, I think the only hole I could see is maybe leaves his chin out a little bit when he backs up.
Does he do that to invite the shot to then get the counter using his feet?
That's true as well. Again, yeah, that's the part of the game.
Does he do that? Because I would guess he probably does a little bit.
Yeah, of course, but you do run that risk. You do run that risk of getting clipped. So that is there. But you have to. It's offset by his distance management, which is just perfect.
Very true.
Tybura was swinging and missing. He was just in and out perfectly. That's probably his best performance in the cage. Really, I can't. And that's high praise considering how good he's been in all his other fights. You know, he just keeps improving, and I no doubt he'll be heavyweight champ. I said it after the Arlovski fight, and I've never really wavered from that. And this just reaffirms it. It was a brilliant performance. And I love, Nick Pete said this as well on the post show. I love the fact that he's getting more evolved, not just in the cage, but on the mic as well. He's being a bit more active. He's being a bit of a showman, but not in a classy, like a classless way, not trash talking, but he's adding that showmanship, which is what you need what you need in this game to really propel yourself to those high levels. Maybe a bit faster than others, and he's doing and saying all the right things. And honestly, the sky's the limit. It really is.
Tom Aspinall is him, and there is no other way to say it than Tom Aspinall is him. A few years ago, I was incredibly excited because I saw a heavyweight that could strike, that could knee, elbow, clinch, wrestle, jiu-jitsu, submit you, knock you out, do absolutely anything. That's what I saw. Then he wins all of these fights. I still believe that. Snaps his leg in the O2. Terribly sad moment. I'm there feeling very shallow as everyone empties from the seats around me, and I'm just looking at him on the floor get stretched out as he's in the middle of the O2. This 6'5" giant ready to put on a show and get a title shot. But I watch every step of his recovery, every step of his journey, and every interview since that, and I genuinely mean that. I got deep inside the recovery of Tom Aspinall because I was super fascinated to see and hear everything that was going on, and he'd done a great job of documenting a lot of that process. And every time I heard him speak, there's a lot of times where fans, if they looked under the bonnet a couple of times, they'll usually find the answer. And the way I say that is, if you go back and watch all the interviews and the build-ups and the conversations for about a year before the Max Holloway trilogy for Alex Volkanovski, you would have probably foreseen a very dominant win. Just listening to them, because a lot of people say there's excuses and all of this, but sometimes there's just reasons, and they have reasons why they didn't maybe perform. Maybe they had a broken ankle. Maybe they couldn't sleep because their baby was crying all night for somewhere. Whatever it may have been, whatever nuance. But coming back to what I was actually saying about Tom Aspinall is, after he broke his knee and I listened to all of these conversations, I heard everything that I wanted to hear. But then I was actually terrified because I'm hearing him say again and again and again and again, I have not showed any skills. And I genuinely believe that. Because if you sit there and say, oh, by the way, he's actually got a spinning hook kick. And by the way, he's actual spinning back kick, or he's spinning elbows, or this or that. He's got this or this. I would believe anything, because he can do anything. And I know for a fact he can go 5 rounds. I know for a fact he can wrestle. I know for a fact he can submit you, knee you, elbow you. He can go into the clinch, and then he can go to elbows. He can go flying switch kicks, flying knee. You pick it, you name it, he can do it. And he can do it at speed and with understanding and a technical level and ability that there is no heavyweights doing that well-rounded at that speed. You can talk about Jon Jones, but they're not. Jon Jones is nowhere near the speed of Tom Aspinall. I'm not concluding an outcome of fight for you. I'm just providing you with a piece of information. Jon Jones is nowhere near the speed of Tom Aspinall. So if Tom Aspinall comes out and I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm not even getting into that.
No, you're right.
But my point is, for the longest time, I've said Tom Aspinall's who beats Jon Jones. He got injured. I'm still saying Tom Aspinall is who beats Jon Jones. And then I watched that performance, and I'm still saying Tom Aspinall is the person to beat Jon Jones. And if he doesn't beat Jon Jones, because Jon Jones leaves the division, he beats anyone else in that division right now. Period.
I'd agree. I think the only question
mark... Don't bring me Pavlovich's. I don't want to hear it.
I was gonna say Pavlovich purely on the power basis, but I'd still.
You have to land to be powerful.
Ground, it's over. Yeah, very true.
You have to land to be powerful. And we talk about Pavlovich being a what?
Pavlovich.
We talk about Pavlovich being a what? A boxer. Oh my goodness. Yeah. You want to have a boxing match with Tom Aspinall in 4-ounce gloves. He's going to be licking his lips with a Pavlovich matchup. And the thing with Tom Aspinall, he always says the right thing, and he always has the good mentality of thinking he's going in there to do 5 hard fights. And if you listen to how he talks about his opponent, the person who gives the most chance to their opponent is Tom Aspinall. You hear him break down their skills and what they do well. He genuinely believes he's going to go in there and have a hard 5 rounds. But sometimes he forgets the skill level he has, because he came out of that interview and he said, I didn't mean to knock him out. I thought I was going to go for 5 rounds. And although that sounds crazy and it sounds like he's joking or being arrogant, you know he's being deadly serious, because the speed that he hits with and the precision he hits with is just a combination you do not see at heavyweight. And if you go back and watch that Pavlovich fight with Curtis Blades, I'll give you one thing to look out for. Pavlovich swinging hooks from his pocket. Yes, he's powerful. Yes, he's landing. Yes, his accuracy was good. But they are mistakes you cannot make against someone like Tom Aspinall with the footwork and the sharp shooting that he has with those 1-2s down the pipe. If you load up and you throw from your right hip against someone like Tom Aspinall, because you've been knocking everyone out, and the Curtis Blades and the Derek Lewis, you are going to get found out. And I personally think Tom may come out and say it's a really tough matchup and it's going to go 5 hard, and I'm glad that he looked at it like that. But if Pavlovich faces Tom Aspinall, he's getting sparked out in the first, and I don't see it going any other way.
Wow. I that's a bold claim. I'm inclined to agree with you, to be honest. There's nothing. There's no doubt in my mind he'd win. But like,
I don't even know. Like,
I don't disagree with you.
I'm all fueled up. I was super tired.
No, you're
I've
right.
Just had some caffeine, and I'm just like, tell me who. Tell me who poses a threat and why.
He is unbelievable.
I'm not sitting here as just a fanboy, or just because he's British, or because it's... I am. I'm sitting here as all of those things. Absolutely all of those things. But I'm sitting here as just a genuine... I'm putting a hat on as just an analyst of watching a fight. A versus B, isn't it? Black versus white. Yeah. Tell me why and how someone beats Tom Aspinall right now. because
No,
I'm intrigued to hear it.
I
just want to hear the game plan because I don't know what it is. For me personally, I don't have the strategy at the moment to know a game plan to beat Tom Aspinall because I don't know where you do it. Because if you're going to try and keep it on the feet and box with him, it's going to be very difficult. And then if you try and pair in your takedowns, you better watch out for those knees coming up the middle. And then the fact that he's got those stiff hips and he's facing absolute beasts. Go and look at Ben France's 150 kg on Instagram. Go look at that man. Go look at that man. He's 150 kg and he makes Tom Aspinall look tiny.
Wild,
and he's in there just every day, just like grabbing him and then wrestling on him and digging underhooks and like turning him over and getting on top. This man is in the trenches of mixed martial arts of the very highest caliber. And I said, watch out for this heavyweight team. And that has to go to mention Mick Parkin as well, that we see on the card, who's in there just with light feet, dropping these hands and popping jabs. What are we talking about heavyweight now? We need to have a look properly at the UK heavyweight scene with Mick Parkin and Tom Aspinall, because in that gym up there with Phil DeFries as well, something very special is happening.
Yeah, Phil DeFries, yeah. Yeah, it's a super team, isn't it? We said that last week.
Give me goosebumps.
I'm excited. We can ramble about that.
Flipping excited. Let's get into UFC 291.
Let's get it, because I'm hyped now.
How long have we been talking for? How long we got?
112 we're going for. I'm going
to
run you with one of the matchups.
Right, give me for a couple of exciting ones. Let's go for a couple nice and swiftly, some predictions, and then let's get stuck into a little bit juicier on the big ones.
I know. Well, so we had some disappointment a few weeks ago because one of the two Bonfim bros lost to Saint Denis, which was, yes, I'll give you that one. But his other brother is fighting Trevin Giles, which I'm excited for, and I think that is a much more favourable matchup. Yeah, exactly. Very excited. We know how good those two are.
Versus Violence for me on that one. Second round.
Second round?
Yeah,
I could see that. I'll go with the second round.
Trevin Giles is grizzled, though. I'll give that to him. He's grizzled, man, and he's skilled actually as well. That could be a fight where Bonfim maybe goes in after an impressive win and thinks, I'm just going to go for Trevin Giles, get a big name on a big card. And then Trevin Giles actually just comes and ruins parties because he can quite easily do that and has the skills to do that. So yeah, have a little look out for that one, a little sleeper one. Hit me with the next.
I will say, not sure about his opponent, but I'm always excited when Jake Matthews fights because he's always one of those guys with a bit of very, very talented, still quite young in the game.
Just putting it together,
he really started to. Yeah, it's all about just putting it together, and he had a couple of really good performances. I think it was against Fijo, the Portuguese guy.
Andre Fijo.
Fialho, yeah. He won that. I believe it was that matchup. Yeah, he looked really good. And he's on the feet. He's really talented. But then he fought, was it Semmelsberger? I think he fought, which was a bit of a setback for him. But he's got the ability, and he's still young in the game, as I said. So I love watching him fight. So it's again, as anyone from Australia, I love your Aussie representation. They always put it on. Yeah. So that's a fight I'm optimistic for. I don't know too much about Miguel Baeza's opponent. So
Miguel Baeza is actually super skillful. Really, he's a South American, Argentinian, I believe. Good kickboxer. Incredible tan. Wait until you see this guy's tan. Incredible tan. I'm being deadly serious. Incredible tan. Looks a little bit like the lighter version of a Carlos Olberg, a little bit. But very skillful. Anyway, that's completely irrelevant. But he's had some really good fights. He's fun. He's actually a really fun fighter to watch. He's had a couple of deficits and a couple of setbacks, but when he gets things going on the feet, he's been in some really, really fun fights.
Who's he fought? I probably watched him fight.
He had a fight of the year contender with someone that's completely evaded my mind, but he's had some fun scraps. But he's had some fights where I thought he was going to get the win and he just didn't. So I'll be interested to see, because he hasn't fought in a little while. I'll be interested to see if he's evolved a little bit and maybe started again, just putting it together and getting a little bit on his career in terms of he's had a little bit of experience now, and can he just start putting the wins together? Because that's where it's so difficult in the UFC. Winning in the UFC is hard. Getting a win in the UFC probably puts you in the 0.1%, if that. And then winning consistently is just even harder. But
we always talk about every week about people's main event, right? And I hope you know where I'm going with this, because there's only one fight on that whole card that deserves that accolade. And I think it's even on the prelims, which is just a complete crime. But it's a matchup I've actually wanted for years, but it's finally happening now. We've got Pereira versus Thompson, which is just... I cannot wait for that. I think that's such a good matchup. Because I will say, although Michelle is like, he's become a bit more tempered, a little bit less of a wild man, a bit more technical, responsible on the feet, not gassing out like he did against Tristan Connolly when he back breakdancing before he's even entered the first round. But he's become a lot more disciplined. He had a good win over Ponzinibbio, and we don't need. Wonder Boy needs little explanation. We know how good he is, even at his age now. He's still putting in good performances.
Freakish.
Yeah, and it's just it's a matchup that already should have happened, but I'm glad it's happening now. At least we're getting it.
It's actually happening at a very good time, because you have a look at this fight between Stephen Thompson and Michel Pereira. They're actually both coming off very good wins, very good momentum, very good names as well in terms of who they fought. Of course, stylistically, it's a beautiful matchup. And I think, of course, Michel Pereira has become a little bit more tempered. But I think if you have a look at someone like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's probably going to bring that out of you. Even if it isn't just in through a way because it's just fun fighting him like that and he gets in the moment and he's just letting things go. Potentially it will be from a realm because Stephen Wonderboy is on the outside and he's making him look a little bit embarrassed and flustered, and he's catching him with weird things and spinning stuff. And he's getting a little bit frustrated and he's starting to throw random stuff and see what sticks. Possibly it's from that way. But either way, I think this is going to be a fun scrap. And I think the fact that it's on the prelims is because it's actually probably going to be the featured prelim, which I believe is actually the most watched fight on the card.
Better,
so it's actually probably it's actually probably a great fight to have there, because for a casual fan, that's probably going to be quite fun to watch. I don't think it's going to be one of them ones where strikers nullify each other. I think it's going to be quite fun.
I was worried about that.
I think it's going to be quite fun. I think what we saw from Stephen Wonderboy Thompson against Kevin Holland last time was absolutely incredible, the fight that he got on. And I think he's in this mindset now of, I'm going to go out, I'm going to put on a performance, I'm going to enjoy the fight, I'm getting towards the end of my career, but I'm going to go look for that finish. I'm going to go be exciting. I'm going to go to town with it and just let my offense go. And Stephen Wonderboy Thompson doesn't get the appreciation quite from the fans for just having that dog in him, because you have a look at some of the fights that Wonderboy Thompson had. He's one of the toughest bastards in the UFC, but one of the nicest as well. So
only been finished once, right?
Yeah,
that was against Pettis, probably. I believe that's the only time
in his career, in his illustrious, storied career of Wonderboy Thompson. He's only been finished
Shame he doesn't
once.
have the belt, man.
So,
it really is.
I'm excited to see this, and well and truly, whoever gets a big win here is propelled into big fight talk, and potentially only one or two away from a title discussion. We have to have that conversation.
We'll go into
in terms of name value.
It's a wild one.
Yeah, let's go into it. Go on, you shout one out.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because the drop off can just happen so quickly when you get older. I don't see it just yet.
He's evergreen. That man's going to be that quick at 98, and I have every faith for that. And I won't believe it until I'll believe it until I see it otherwise.
I'm going to go with a Wonderboy decision.
Yeah.
That's what I'll go with, yeah. I think that's a good shout.
I'm going to go for the same thing. I think, once again, Wonderboy Thompson actually showed how tough, how durable, how skilled, and how willing he is to eat a shot and come back with his own. Like I said, we forget how tough he is. And I think Michel Pereira is going to be able to land a couple of shots. He is probably going to be a little bit more measured than we've recently seen in some more wilder fights. But I think Wonderboy Thompson, whenever it's a kickboxing match, you can't bet against him, really. And you don't really see this guy into the ground. I think we can confidently say that. And any fight that stays standing for 15 or 25 minutes, I'm always going to say Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. If I can eliminate grappling, I'm always going to say Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
Yeah. I will actually say, though, credit to Pereira, because his ground game has got really, really impressive.
But is he going to grapple with him?
His takedowns.
With his ego
I
and game plan?
I know you said it won't happen.
Yeah.
Very true, actually, about the ego. But look out for that. Look out for a takedown attempt or two from him, because he does have that in his locker. But either way, it's an exciting fight.
So the question really becomes of this for Michel Pereira is, I think his game plan is going to answer the question of, is he trying to just be a big name, exciting fights, getting big fights, and he's understood that's where his career is? Or is he going to just try and get a big win over a name like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson any way he can and progress up to the belt? Because we've heard him talk about the belt many times and he seems adamant on getting it. So this is quite interesting to see how he strategizes for this fight, because if he comes out and he's more measured and more patient, chips away a little bit, tries to play a bit more of a points game and take him down and just mix it up, and maybe it's not going to be glamorous or too aggressive, but he's going to nick a win over a big Stephen Wonderboy and build good momentum.
It can happen.
It could happen. So it's going to be an interesting one. But anyway, move us on to the next one.
We'll move up. Well, we got Chiesa versus Kevin Holland,
Fun
and
fight.
I love it. It's a great fight. I mean, any Kevin Holland fight's a great fight.
Yeah.
That's never up for debate,
Top
isn't
10
it?
most exciting fights in the UFC,
Oh,
100%.
I love it. You know, he's unorthodox. He's just wild. He's vocal. You can't
He's
not watch a
game.
Kevin Holland fight. He's game. That's the best way of putting it. And so is Chiesa as well. Both day. It's a nice clash of styles because you got a guy like Chiesa who's very, very experienced on the mat. Holland maybe not so much, but obviously much a bigger threat on the feet too.
Black belt on the match. You got to remember,
Yeah.
it's not Eddie Bravo, but it's someone like that. It's not Eddie Bravo. It's, I can't remember, one of the trickiest jiu-jitsu masters. I can't remember for the life of me, but
Don't worry too much. But either way,
Trevin Luter. Oh, was he? Oh my goodness, his name's just completely.
don't worry about
Travis
it too much.
Luter. Travis Luter, black belt, high level.
Yeah.
Black belt is Kevin Holland, and he's got actually quite good jiu-jitsu for mixed martial arts.
Yeah, he does.
He's got super good jiu-jitsu, right? Go on, I can get stuck into it.
I was gonna say I can see a world. I feel like a guy like Chiesa, he's always been in that same sort of realm, just not exactly just in the top 15, but generally on the outskirts of it, struggling to really make that next level. And I could see a guy like Kevin Holland capitalizing on that. I could see him clipping Chiesa early maybe, and then I could see a choke. I could see him maybe flexing his submission game, which he hasn't done as much as maybe he can do. And I could see that maybe off because a guy like Chiesa is pretty durable, doesn't get finished, outright. I mean, so I could see that happening, maybe rocking him on the feet and then coming in and finishing him with a choke, perhaps a DAS or probably a rear naked.
So funny you say that.
Yeah.
I look at this fight, I thought I was going to be a little bit abstract and edgy, and then you literally just said everything I was going to say, which is a little bit annoying. But when I have a look at this fight and have a look at this matchup, I think for Chiesa, when he's at his best, he sort of entertains it on the feet until he can get into his grappling, which is obviously his world and which is obviously where he's going to look to dominate. And I think naturally fighting someone like Kevin Holland, you're going to think that's your best path to victory. But I think if you watch Kevin Holland fights and think that your best path to victory is going to be going down and submitting him, I mean, I think it's going to be your best path to victory. I don't think that's going to be an easy or fruitful path to victory because Kevin Holland at 170 pounds is freakishly strong, freakishly quick, and has also got extremely long levers and very tricky jiu-jitsu, which is not only offensively dangerous, it's defensively very good. And if you're going to sit there at home and maybe think, but Will, I just watched this happen against Chimaev. Watch the 40 seconds of grappling exchanges with Chimaev and tell me how impressive some of those scrambles and escapes are for that short period of time. I know obviously then he got to the submission eventually, but that's just because of the stupid pace that Chimaev put. And 9 times out of 10, no one does that because they know that if they don't get that in that very small window, they're going to gas and they're probably going to lose the fight. Chimaev just went balls to the wall and he got it and he done well.
Yeah.
But I see a world, really, how I see this fight going is Kiesa's super skilled and obviously super well versed in the welterweight division. He's been there for a long time. He knows how the game goes, and obviously he's coming from a bit of a setback on his last loss, and we haven't seen him for a while, so it'll be interesting to see where he's sort of at with his career. But Kevin Holland at 185 got out grappled really because of a size discrepancy. He was walking in to fight week at 185. And then you have people like Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson walking in at 210, you know? So they just come down to a little bit of that. But then also you started seeing his wrestling getting a little bit better, and then his defense got a little bit better in his cage work and digging the underhooks and getting safe and things like that. So I don't think that Chiesa's going to have that necessary horsepower to get into the positions I think he's going to need to. And I can see a world where Kevin Holland stings him with a couple of shots on the feet that Chiesa doesn't see coming. He backs him up against the cage. And I can see a world where he's standing in orthodox stance. He throws a right straight down the pipe that lands.
Yeah.
After he throws the knee, or maybe even before he throws the knee, he lands it, crumbles Chiesa a little bit, and then I think he goes for the front choke. Whether that's going to be a guillotine, I don't think. I think it's going to be a position where I can sort of see him in a turtle, or maybe he's beating him up a little bit. And again, he wraps up the DAS because we've seen Kevin Holland get that a few times. And we call Tony Ferguson the DAS Knight. We should have a look at Kevin Holland because he should be the DAS Knight in name and nature. Because this man, if he is not fighting crime in the streets of Texas, he is choking people and knocking people out in the octagon. And he's one of the funniest fighters in the UFC.
He is.
And we have to remember, when we look at the losses on his card, you probably have to put a lot of context into those that they were probably on 30 minutes notice, knowing Kevin Holland, because he is as game as they come, and he jumps into main events. And remember how Kevin Holland came into the UFC, because he went and fought Meheta when no one else wanted to, when Thiago Santos was tearing through everyone at light heavyweight, I think, or middleweight it was at the time. No one wanted to fight him. Kevin Holland steps in last minute's notice, get a big mouth, as Dana would say. He comes in, puts on a show, a really close decision. And that's how we noticed him. And that's how he's always lived on, because he's one of the gamiest, most toughest, durable opponents about.
Yeah.
And he's super skilled. And that karate, kung fu, Kenny style that he comes with is super tricky. We're obviously talking about Wonderboy. It's a very similar style. We saw how that matched up. And you got to be watching out for those side kicks in that karate stance, or those hook kicks coming from the lead side. Or even when he's dropping his hand down and then just blasting a 1-2 in your face, or with knees and elbows in the clinch. Because he's dangerous, he's ranging, he hits hard. He hits hard for 185, he was knocking guys out. So put him in 170... he's knocking guys out clean, and he's walking into fight week at 185. He's a dangerous player at 170, and I'm telling you, if you are not on your P's and Q's against Kevin Holland in that 170-pound division, you're going to get finished. And I think he's going to get a finish this weekend.
I think, well, we're in perfect agreement here, but the question is, what round are you rocking with? That's what I want to know. Second, I'm going third. The fact that we're going on the exact same wavelength there, rocking him and then going for a DAS,
because we've seen that as well.
Yeah.
We've seen that.
Yeah,
we've seen him do very similar things recently. We've seen him hurt people like that. We've also seen him wrap up some submissions as well. So you look at the sort of matchup, and I think it's a nice matchup for him, to be perfectly honest. I think if you give anyone to Kevin Holland, I think giving him a jiu-jitsu grappler is absolutely perfect, I think. And I don't think Chiesa is just that, but I think that's where he's strongest and where he always wants to get a fight. So if he wants to get there against Kevin Holland, I just think that's going to be tricky, because it's hard to prepare for a guy like Kevin Holland, because he's 6'2". He does things, he doesn't move in a way that people move because of the jiu-jitsu background he comes from. He's very much that 10th planet sort of style, that crazy Eddie Bravo style. He's rolling for omoplatas, and he's got really tricky escapes and Kimura sweeps and things like that. He's got really nice skills and submissions, and does things that no one else does, and has got the levers that no one else does. That he gives a really weird look. So anyway, let's get into the big fights of this card. Come on. Let's get stuck into the big ones. We've got some juicies.
We'll rush through Ferguson and Bobby Green, which is a shame, because if you told me Tony Ferguson a few years ago and we were doing the same podcast, I probably wouldn't be rushing through him. But I'm actually going for Tony here. I know Bobby Green's a big favourite, but I feel like, Tony, he's still got a point to prove, and I don't think at all he's going to get anywhere near the top again. I don't think that's up for debate, but I could see him, it does happen. They'll, fighters on their slope downwards, on their downwards road, they tend to grab a win or two here or there. I think this might be one of those cases. Even though a guy like Bobby Green, great on the feet, gave Drew Dober a lot of problems, even though he did get finished. And Jared Gordon, obviously, even though that got overturned. But I think Tony's got a point to prove here, and he can still on the feet, he can still hang. He dropped Michael Chandler. People forget that, and I think there's ample opportunity for him, a guy as unorthodox as he is, to get a win here, because it's just from eventually it will come. I think that will happen. So I'm gonna go for a Tony decision. Actually, I'm gonna run with.
When I look at this fight originally, I said to myself that I actually don't like this for Tony Ferguson, just going off of the basis of his last performance. That was my initial
reaction too.
Off of his last performance, and knowing that Bobby Green's been pretty active, he's been in there with good competition, he's been churning it out, he hasn't been taking a ton of damage. Even that fight with Jared Gordon, obviously, it didn't really even go the distance, so he had all that training camp, so he's coming off the back of that, he's quite well prepared, he's always in the gym, all these different things, obviously, that Tony is. And then I just thought that it's probably going to, this is probably going to stay standing, Bobby's probably going to box, and Tony's going to be a little bit off the beat, and it's going to be a little bit maybe just of a one-sided, just going off of the Nate Diaz fight. But then when I actually think back to what that Nate Diaz fight was, I remember Nate Diaz being ridiculously tough with those low kicks that I don't think Bobby Green is going to be able to do as well as Nate Diaz is, in terms of just absolutely ignoring it. And we know, obviously, that Bobby's going to want to set up the hands in that boxing, and he's going to struggle to have those low hands and the pop and that spring in his step to let those jabs go and those straights go from a low angle if his front leg's chewed up. Because Tony may have looked slow and off the beat and off the boil on his last fight with Nate Diaz, but my goodness, was he kicking his legs hard. And I was shocked that someone could absorb that many hard low kicks. And I think that he's likely going to come out, and even if he takes a couple of shots, Bobby Green doesn't hit that hard in the early rounds. And he's not trying to hit that hard. He's trying to be a little bit evasive and move laterally and pop shots, and he's not trying to sit down necessarily. Yeah. I think that Tony's maybe just going to start working on the leg and chew that up early. And I think if he can be awkward and find a way just inside or just to a weird body lock position or maybe just against the cage at some point, and he starts working just in the clinch and just being a little bit grimy and a bit sluggish and then just working to the back or into the grappling, I think he could work in a world where he gets a submission and he goes into that world. And I think if he's looking for a win, I think Tony can very much do that. And if he's looking to just actually get back to winning ways, which I'm sure he is, then I think that's the way to go it. So I'm actually looking at this more so now of a Tony Ferguson submission, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go Tony submission, submission in the third round.
Yeah, that was my other. I was torn between that and a decision, but I think Bobby Green's he's a tenacious guy.
Like, he really is. I love Bobby Green, man. He's a fun style to watch.
Game as hell, man. So that's why I'm leaning a bit more to decision. We'll brush through that though. Co-main event, which I heard rumors. I saw you. Sure, this is that's a tongue twister.
I'm sure you saw.
I'm sure you saw that.
I'm sure on a seashore. Seesaw.
I'm sure you saw that this was rumored to be a title fight. I don't know if you saw that swirling around. Doesn't it like
maybe I put the rumors out there as well. I said those things.
Yeah, you probably. Yeah,
I did say something like that. I did say I want them to.
I mean, I wish it was, but it doesn't look like that's happening. Bit of a shame, but the matchup is there. I don't care. I love the fight. I think it's great. Good to see Pereira moving up because I think really that's what he needed to do. I think he can have really good success there because let's be real, on the feet, he is
a beast.
About as dangerous as you're going to get. We don't really need to discuss how good that left hand is. We know the power he brings and what he can bring. Kickboxing accolades all over. You know, there's not much that needs to be said there. On the mat, obviously, there are questions. You know, he needs to face a guy who can really take him down. Blachowicz can offer that, which is why this is such an interesting matchup. But I will want to point out that people really, really disrespect how good Jan is on the feet. He really is powerful. Those leg kicks, some of the best in the game.
True. And those body kicks.
And the body kicks as well. You saw how red Reyes's liver was, you know, in that fight when he won the belt. I feel like the only thing that's scaring me a little bit is, I know I bring it up so much, but it's the age. It's how old he is. You know, Jan is, I think he's 38 now, which is, you know, he's really teetering.
That's not
getting to that point. But I guess again, at the heavyweights, it doesn't matter as much. Yeah.
Especially when you look at the Glover blueprint.
Yeah, that's why I'm still leaning towards him, actually. And for me, it's the wrestling that's the path. I actually think he can hang with Alex there on the feet, to be honest. A lot better than a lot of people believe. I think he's very defensively responsible. He has a really awkward style where it's kind of hard to really clip him. He's actually quite mobile for a light heavyweight as well, which a lot of people don't give him enough credit for. We saw that against Izzy as well. Very active all the time, and obviously the wrestling was the keys to his success there. And obviously you do have to remember Adesanya's a lot smaller than Pereira is naturally at his normal walking weight. But I think a guy like Jan is going to have the experience, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. I think it's going to be experience over the power of Pereira. I think he's going to wrestle him to a victory, perhaps even a submission maybe. I could see it. I could see a submission perhaps in the third round. Yeah, I can.
I think
third round submission I'm going to go with.
When I look at this fight, I think there is one thing that I have to note on Jan Blachowicz' side is not only is he a very well-credentialed and very well-versed kickboxer in terms of competition he's fought and when he's shown it multiple times. We look at people that he's fought. Dominic Reyes, people like Luke Rockhold even. Really tricky styles, those.
Rakic as well.
Really tricky styles. Magomed,
Ankalaev, yeah.
Ankalaev. But when you have a look at Jan Blachowicz and you look at what he does really well with his striking, obviously he's got devastating hands, devastating powers, that left hook, the Polish power, we know all of that. But one thing that he does really well, that Anthony Smith always picks up on as well, he's got really good kicking defense. And you go back to his fights and you realise he shuts down a lot of people's offensive games if they're good kickers. If you look at the likes of Luke Rockhold, one of the best kickers ever. Full stop in Luke Rockhold, one of the best kicking games ever. One of the best question mark kicks you're ever likely to see. And the dexterity on that southpaw kick was frightening from Luke Rockhold. One of the best kickboxers we've ever seen in the UFC. So talented. Then you have a look at the likes of Dom Reyes when he fought him. Very good, tricky kickboxer. Then you have a look at the likes of Israel Adesanya. One of the best kickboxers we've ever seen. So many guys with so many good kicking games that he's been able to nullify and actually go into his realm, which you have to give credit for. So that's super interesting coming into this Alex Pereira fight, who's known as an extremely credentialed kickboxer himself with an unbelievable kicking game that Izzy has noticed many times and has noted to him many times. The thing that Alex Pereira does so well, which I think is going to be difficult for him to pick up on, is Jan Blachowicz does a very good job of defending those sort of body and the high kicks and even the low kicks, but it's the low kicks of Alex Pereira which are so fast and so untelegraphed, no fat on them, and you don't see them, and that's so devastating, that make him really so effective. And I think that in a 3-round fight, this is likely going to play out on the feet most of the time. I think the narrative is going to be the Israel Adesanya fight when Jan fought him and the takedown was there and all of these different things. But think about when those takedowns came. They came in the 4th round and the 5th round, right at the end of the fight. But this isn't a title fight anymore. This is 3 rounds. No. This is not championship rounds where maybe we can say, okay, the experience is going to play on and the factor and all of this. But not only is Alex more experienced now, not only is he training with the most experience, but it's also a 3-round fight. So he's probably looking at this thinking, I've just had 2 title fights and I'm quite looking forward to this 3 rounds. And looking at him at 230 pounds and looking at his back, he's so strong. I actually go on.
Sorry, this is just a really important point. I forgot actually, and this goes for everybody. But
altitude.
I don't think he's gonna be as excited as he's gonna sound excited. But I think when he gets in there, especially how big and much weight he carries, it's gonna happen with a lot of fights, and we'll get that on because it was the deciding factor for my pick in the main event, which we'll get on to.
But that's go on.
But yeah, I can see Pereira. I can see him getting tired there. I really can. And we know how big of a factor that is because it happened to Leon. He looked like a different breed in that trilogy match, didn't he?
I did say that. I said that at the time though. Yeah. When he looked like that, if you'd watched any of Leon Edwards' career, he'd never looked like that before, he was. Ever.
Exactly.
Ever. Not once.
Yeah.
And the only variable was one thing. Well, there was 2 things. It was a title fight, so maybe you can say, it was nerves, it was performance anxiety. Probably not, because we've seen him so many times in so many sort of big fights do that. Or altitude, because he's 8,000 foot above sea level. Probably that one, I would imagine. You know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's a great point to bring up. What's because I'm glad that you said that, because obviously we've got to bring that in. But again, and obviously that is a factor, but I just think in a 3 rounds, I think if that's going to be a detriment to anyone, I think it's going to be Jan. Because if Jan has a better chance to win this, it's going to be to grapple. And if he does grapple, and maybe Alex stuffs 1 or 2, which is very possible, or gets to his feet on 3 or 4, and then Jan's thinking, okay, he's really strong down there, he's got up 4 times, my arms are feeling heavy and I can't really breathe, probably going to keep this one standing.
That's a good point.
And then it gets a little bit tricky. And then Alex starts letting his hands go a little bit, and I've not quite seen that pop or that zip in Jan's last few fights. Or last couple of fights, not last few fights, but maybe his last 1 or 2. Maybe he's just not had that ability to just be a little bit more free, a little bit more explosive, and let his hands go a little bit more risk to reward, potentially. Easier said than done, of course, especially at light heavyweight.
Yep.
And especially against Alex Pereira. Oh my goodness, that man is terrified at 185, let alone 205.
Very true.
He's so very scary, my goodness. I saw him grappling with Glover Teixeira. He's in a lake, a river downstream, and he's holding Glover Teixeira with one hand. And his back is like the size of the river. and it's just like all his back muscles are pulsating. He's shredded to the bone at 230 pounds, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I don't think people are going to start to grapple him.
I'm still sticking by my
anymore.
pick, despite all of that.
I don't think people are going to grapple him anymore. I don't think they're going to be able to grapple him anymore, because one thing we have to factor in with Alex Pereira, he's getting exponentially better every time he fights. And as Teddy Atlas says, you get 30% better as a champion. So not only has he seeked the benefits of becoming a champ, seeing there, being there at the highest degree, now he's even got even more motivation because he's gone into a different division and they've basically said, here you go, here's a fight against a number one contender. If you go and win this, you're fighting for the title. And it may even tee you up for one of the biggest crossover fights between divisions we've ever seen in an Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira quadrilogy. I'm getting ahead of myself, but there it is for the UFC to go and tee this up. So Alex Pereira has everything to play for, and he has all the skills to do it. I'm watching him in these boxing rounds looking terrifying. Okay. I'm watching grapple and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, he's strong. And I'm watching him have this experience now with the highest training partners. And I'm thinking, he's going to be hard to beat over 3 rounds. I think he's going to win.
Fair enough.
I don't know.
Okay, I'm glad you're going in the opposite direction because it makes things way more interesting.
Let's talk about the main.
I'm actually going to change mine slightly. I'm going to say Jan for the decision, but that's what I'll roll with. What was your, you didn't give a...
I think the safe bet for me is going to be an Alex Pereira 3rd round decision. I think that...
3rd round decision.
Third round decision. Well, it would have to be a decision if it went to the 3rd round.
Yeah, it'd have to be a decision.
How I see this going, though, if I'm just going to give you an accurate prediction, I think that Jan Blachowicz sensibly is going to think, okay, I'm going to strike with him because I believe he can for a little bit of time before Alex starts taking over. I'm going to strike with him until he feels comfortable to strike, then I'm going to go for the takedown. I think Alex is just going to be... His hips are going to be too heavy and his defense is going to be too sharp if he doesn't have a knee or an uppercut waiting, bearing in mind that he has a really, really low positions with his hands. So you have to be super careful shooting on Alex Pereira, because if your eyes are not sharp in the pocket, you're seeing knees and uppercuts come to your chin and they are switching you off. Whether that's a flying knee or whether that's an uppercut or whether that's even a jab that's coming from an uppercut position, you have to mind your P's and Q's with your takedowns. If you gets him up against the fence, takes him down or trips him, I think 1 or 2 exchanges, Alex is going to pop to his feet. I think he's going to then think, this is going to be difficult to do and sustain this, and I'm not really getting anywhere, so I'm going to keep it standing. I think they're both maybe going to look a little bit at altitude, and I think Alex Pereira is going to throw a little sort of shovel left hook from his left hip, and I think he's going to catch Jan Blachowicz. I think he's going to go to the body. I think he's going to corral him against the cage, and I think he's going to be able to maybe stand in TKO him in the 3rd.
Okay, I like that prediction, even if I don't see it, but I like it.
That's how I see it going down. Let's talk about the main.
I'm excited. Very much. So the big factor for me was the altitude. If I did, when I realized it was in Utah, I was going to pick the other way, but now I'm picking Gaethje, and the reason I say that is because I've heard that Dustin's only... I'm not actually 100% sure on this, but I've heard that Dustin's only just got there. He's only been acclimatizing very recently, and maybe I'm wrong there. Someone probably fact check me, but if that is the case, then for me it's a Gaethje win because it's such a big factor, and I really don't want that to be the case. Even though I like both of them, I really want Dustin to get another shot at the belt because he is that guy, and I feel like altitude's going to be. I want to say
one thing to that though. What I will say about the acclimatizing in terms of the altitude is, let's take Leon Edwards as actually the perfect example. Leon Edwards went, I think, about a month before his title fight, or 3 weeks.
It's 2 weeks, I believe.
I feel like it was longer than 2 weeks. 100%. I feel like it was longer than 2 weeks. He was up in the mountains. I'm sure it was longer. My point in saying that is there's been people that have gone to altitude for a very long periods of time in terms of getting there just before a fight and still felt those physical effects. So I think whether it's 1 week or 2, or whether it's 2 weeks or 3 for Dustin Poirier, I think having that acclimation period, I think, is important, and I think a week should do that. But I think fighting is always just going to... Whether you're there 2 weeks and in a chamber and all this stuff, I think still when you're in a fist fight against the best guys, I think that's still just going to play a factor. I don't think you're going to get that. You're going to cover that hole in that short period of time, whether you're there for 2 weeks or 3.
Especially when you're fighting a guy like Gaethje. We got to remember, who trains at altitude if I'm not mistaken, with Trevor
And
Whitman.
his pace is altitude. We have to remember his pace is in the frantic, frenetic, high pace. That is Justin Gaethje. That is the war of Justin Gaethje. But when I first looked at this fight, and I thought, oh, this is weird because this is a rematch in a similar position a few years down the line
it's
in
weird,
quite a different landscape, and I think it's going to play out the same. However, I then started getting into the X and O's of how I actually think this fight's going to go, and I'm slowly but surely going over to the side of Justin Gaethje winning this fight. I really do.
Yeah.
Because
for me, it was the altitude. That was the factor. I was always on Dustin.
Definitely.
Even though they both improved and evolved, I was still firm that Dustin would win just because he has that bit of discipline on the feet, you know, which works in Gaethje's favor a lot of the time, going a bit crazy, going a bit wild.
Not at that high level, though.
But, yeah. So that was why I was leaning towards Dustin. But and as soon as I remembered it was in Utah, I just don't see it going all the way. I can see Dustin gassing out early in the second round. I can see a Gaethje finish. I really can, a TKO. That was the best one I picked.
When I look at this fight, the obvious preface to this conversation, I start every fight when I look at this fight. No, I need a new introduction to that. I'm going to go with a little new introduction for that.
Okay.
Breaking down this fight originally, I looked at Dustin Poirier, and I know the credentials, I know the skill set, I know what I'm going to get. A little bit like Volkanovski, in a way. He's quite a certain bet, Dustin Poirier. You know you're going to get good boxing. You know you're going to get dogged, determined skills and hard work and just that unwillingness to give up and to compromise in positions and fight till the very end. Therefore, he's always in the fight and he's always got the sharpest skills to win a fight, of course. But then I thought about it and I thought, let me have a look behind the scenes. You look at Justin Gaethje, you hear his camp, you hear his coaches, you hear him in interviews. That man understands and notes that he's got very few fights left in this organization, and he is 100% wholeheartedly committed to getting a run at that championship belt. And I just look at them objectively side by side. And on one hand, I've got Justin Gaethje, and I'm hearing all of his coaches and him talking about how everything is solely centered into getting the belt and how they're doing that, how they're refining their game plan, how they're refining their skills, how he's eating better, sleeping better. You look at Justin Gaethje now, he's got a nutritionist full time for the last however many years. His nutrition game's gone through the roof. You have a look at his physique in the Fitz-Eve game, it was completely different to anything we've ever seen. And then we have a look at his actual game planning. Again, completely different to anything we've ever seen, because now we started using good footwork with Trevor Whitman. Now we started using good game planning. Now we started using that awkward and erratic wild style intelligently with smart jabs, with lateral movement, with good timing and good understanding of when to push and when to pull back, because he wants to go for this title now and he doesn't want to take unnecessary damage. And on the flip side, we've got Dustin Poirier, who's sitting at home saying, with all due respect, Beneil Dariush doesn't get me excited and I want names that are going to get me out of bed. And that's understandable because he's fought everyone in the game. But on the flip side of that, we've got Justin Gaethje who's saying, you know what, give me Fitz-Eve, the scariest, most dangerous striker in the lightweight division, because I need to get back to that belt. And if I've got to beat Fitz-Eve to get to that belt, I will. And guess what? He did. And guess what? He's against Dustin Poirier, the rematch that he's previously lost. He's got everything on the line in Justin Gaethje. He's got his title fight, he's got the rematch, he's got his pride, and he's got all that hard work against Fitz-Eve as well, and all that momentum going in his favour. And I think then you have a look at the altitude, then you have a look at the momentum and the recent activity, and I think this is Justin Gaethje's time. And I don't think it's going to be a clear, easy fight. I just think everything that leads me to pick to a decision makes me think that it's going to be a Justin Gaethje win.
I'm the same.
Personally, on a decision over a close, maybe a split decision, but I think Justin Gaethje is going to get 3-2 on this one and take the decision.
That's a good shout. Yeah, decision's a very good call. I mean, I know for me, if he's going to get a finish, it'd be late. I could see it on the feet, just from fatigue, a standing TKO, because Dustin's not the type of guy to go down easy. We saw the shots he took against Dan Hooker. My God, that's one of my favorite fights. You can just hear every shot. Yeah, so I don't think he's going to go down easy. So I could see a TKO against the fence. I said second round. I'm gonna go third round actually, because that's when it's really gonna their fatigue is going to be at its worst, obviously. So it's a bit more of a logical pick. But decision's a good call. Yeah, I'll go with that. I hope it goes the other way purely because I like Dustin more, but I like both of them. They're both. It's just a great matchup. We're privileged to see this.
Yeah,
It's a matchup we love, isn't it? You can't not like it.
Whatever happens. The best man wins in this one, and the fans win. Cliche but true, because we get a BMF title, which, although it's a little bit gimmicky. Yeah, they made it a sort of a different time.
Yeah.
We look at it for what it is. It's given a bigger platform to the fighters, a bigger opportunity. It's given a bigger payday. It's given something to actually hold and something to tangibly fight for, not just your hand getting raised. Now you've got a big silver belt around your waist. Now you're indefinitely going to have those photos. You're indefinitely going to have a belt at home. You're going to have all the notoriety that brings with it, and the naming and the branding and the brand deals. You're probably going to make a drink or a sports bar that says BMF, Justin Gaethje, whatever it may be. So many opportunities to be leveraged. So when we're sitting home at fans and we're going, oh, why are they making that? Why don't we actually think of it from being a fighter's perspective and the opportunities and outcomes that that's going to bring? And we look at that and think, yeah, this is actually probably a pretty good deal. This is probably a pretty good deal, and it's quite good to see this for fighters. And yeah, you may not love it, and it may water down however you may see it. But at the end of the day, fighters are getting paid more. There's more eyeballs on them. There's more promotion. There's more build-up, and there's more fans tuning in to see who is the BMF. And whether you like it or not, you're gonna watch it.
It's happening. Exactly. Good, perfect way of putting it.
It's been a long week, man.
You need to breathe after that one.
It's actually been a long week. Like, it has been a long week. It's been a fun week. Super blessed, actually. Super blessed to be in the position that I'm in. Yeah. Because
I think we'll call it on that one, though.
Being at Cage Warriors was obviously. I'll just wrap up on conclusion of being Cage Warriors. Obviously, was Friday. Was fun. Really fun card. A lot of talent coming on that scene, the regional scene. Always fun in the O2. Again, super grateful to be there and to work the event, and to be in a position now where I'm quite comfortable when I go into those settings, know how it's set up, know how to operate, know how to conduct myself, and what to do and what not to do. I know the people that are there, so I can speak to other professionals in the field and sort of pick their brains and learn different things and all the right things, all the good things. And then obviously just to be there on Saturday. Obviously, it was so gutting because I got a message, for those listening that don't know, I got a message probably on Friday or Thursday it was, from Nathaniel, and he said, by the way, mate, sorted you a ticket, great seat for Saturday. And I had to politely decline. Obviously, I was severely gutted, but again, blessed to be in a position where I was offered that. That was kind of cool.
Exactly.
But I also got to go down to Bournemouth and document my friend, create a moment in the history of his life and our life as well. It's a cool journey because not only is he the start of his martial arts career, and he's one of my longest, nearest and dearest friends that got me into MMA, it's also the start of my journey as well in terms of my brand and what I've done. And if I can create a small documentary for his title win, and it was brilliant as well. It was a brilliant evening. It was a fun build-up. The walkout was incredible. The framing and the scenes is cool. I'm really actually looking forward to jumping and getting it chopped up. So shout out to Frankie for his win. Yeah, because it's the one thing that I want to sort of leave on, and then you say anything that you want on the back of it. But the one thing that I'll say to any fight fan that's listening to this, or to anyone that just enjoys sport or combat sports or whatever it may be, you need to go and experience up close and personal a local regional event. Whether it's because you've got a friend on it, or you know a coach, or you follow someone on Instagram, or it's a friend of a friend, however it may be, you need to go and look and feel and see and breathe everything that is a local regional mixed martial arts event. And obviously I've got the luxury of being backstage with the fighters and the coaches and seeing it all in its naked glory. And that's really what it is. Because when you're in those back rooms and you're seeing people get pushed around as they're warming up because someone's coming through and they're wheeling the wheelchair through to go through the ambulance, and someone's laying on a table with a cold press on a fold-out table there, and there's a little curtain, and you're getting ushered upstairs and then downstairs. Then you're getting told to warm up. Then you're getting told to get up. There's no warm-up mats, and you're just sitting there getting thrown about. And you're told, oh, okay, by the way, you're not on at 8 anymore. You're on at 10. And you see everyone, they're coming into the back room and their eyes are split open and they're all hunched over and concussed, and you're seeing these people hobble into these rooms and just slumped over a chair and a table and their faces busted open, and they put everything on the line for a fight that they got no money for. No one's going to really see outside of that room. And you see all of the sport, like I said, in its naked glory. You see the pain, you see the thrill, the jubilation, you see the will, you see the thrill, the agony, you see the pain, the despair, you see the coaches, the advice, the small intricacies, and you see the sport from its very infancy all the way to the top, and it shows you everything that goes into this game. And it just gives me chills when I'm at these events, because you just see this like low budget scramble, and then you see this 1% of the promotion on the outside, and going on behind the scenes is just an absolute madhouse. And the finished product on the outside is these fighters that are just evolving and building their careers to eventually get onto the biggest stage.
Yeah.
And you're watching these movies unfold in real life, and it's so entertaining. And you watch these things like Last Chance U, you watch these things like Quarterback, and these incredible documentaries, and we get the privilege to go there and watch these real life, real time, and to get and feel, experience it. And it's really exciting, and we're blessed to be in that position. So,
absolutely.
It's been a good week.
Oh, that was a little soliloquy there.
That's a nice word. What does that word mean? Soliloquy.
It's I don't know the specific definition, but it's in Shakespeare, when like one character has like this I could be wrong here, but they have like their one moment, like they have like it's like a speech sort of thing, like a tangent there, like Macbeth, when he's like about to, like, it's near the end of Macbeth and he starts going on a big tangent about time and shit. I don't know. Going back to the GCSE days, soliloquy. Yeah,
soliloquy.
I don't know the spelling. Soliloquy. Something like
that. That's a nice word. I'll add that to the Arsenal. Like a little cameo.
The Arsenal, yeah.
Okay, a little cameo. Okay, that's nice.
Something like that.
That's a good place to round up on Casuals and Counters.
There we go.
Episode 8, because in that episode we really got through just about everything that's going on.
We did.
In MMA and our lives. So, as always, Leo, it's been a good week in the world.
Thank you, mate.
It's been a good catch-up. It's been a good chat, as always. Thank you for tuning in. You can find us on Spotify.
Honestly, you're dropping a stinker.
I'm not doing very well. You can find us on Spotify every Monday, and you will be up
every Monday.
This Monday, we'll be on YouTube, we'll be on Spotify. Find us there. You'll find the clips across both of our platforms. That's Leo Cooper MMA on Instagram and YouTube, and that's Casuals Corner MMA, myself, Will, on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, any platform you can think of, I'm there. Go find it. As always, look after yourself. Take care. Peace.